Hi, dear language learners. Here are 3 ways to think about confidence in a different way. I call it the BCC mindset. That will just help you so much to get out of that famous freeze mode. Freeze mode is when you get into a new social context, you are trying to speak the new language, but then you just freeze because you have these, and this is the opposite of the BCC. You have those beliefs about confidence that just totally socially isolate you, that make you become like a statuette, I call it, like you freeze like this, you don't react anymore. And that actually hinder you to get in touch with people, and that will just harm you. So, before we dive in, I'm Dr. Alex, I'm a social psychologist, and I help you to use the fundamental laws of social psychology to speak with unshakable confidence in your next language, that is, of course. So let's dive in. BCC, what does it mean? B stands for belief. So the first one about this mindset is, what is your beliefs about confidence? First of all, confidence is not an emotion. It's a belief that you tell yourself about what actually confidence is or how a confident person behaves. And usually what I see and what I used to have as well in my, let's say, previous years, not younger years, we're all young. What I used to have as well is I used to believe confidence is the absence of fear. So confident people are kind of confident in that they're not fearful. And that is just not true. It's the belief that we should take, and that's the mindset that I would recommend, is fear, intellectual fear, or that socially learned fear, is just normal. We need to embrace it. So whenever I speak in a new language, or this applies also to other contexts, speaking in your mother tongue in front of a great audience, fear of speaking publicly, all those fears are socially learned, and we need to embrace them as something that is just part of the game. So being confident includes fear. We need to work with it. It's a normal emotion that rises up, being fearful, being nervous. Watch my previous video, which I did about how to overcome that fear. And again, the disclaimer is I'm not talking about these life-saving fears, like running away from a huge life-threatening danger. That is not what I mean here. I mean socially learned fear in terms of getting into the heads of others, like what might the other person think, or what do they think of me? How's my image? Oh, I might lose my social image if no. That are socially learned fears, and that is just the normal nervosity, I call it, or this feeling of being nervous in terms of it actually makes you better if we face it, in terms of having that adrenaline rush that makes you perform brilliantly, actually. So we need to embrace it, acknowledge that emotion of fear as something normal, and then see fear as something that is not the absence. Sorry, seeing confidence as not the absence of fear, but seeing confidence as embracing the fear and including it in your speaking, in your interactions with others. So that is B, changing the belief about what confidence is. That was the first one. Now, BCC. So now let's get to the C. The C means curiosity. Let me define curiosity through the opposite. What would be the opposite option? If you stop being curious in your learning journey, or if you're in your speaking a new language, you would define yourself through a very stagnating state of not growing, not learning. And that is not confidence. Confidence is actually saying where you're standing and asking questions and being curious about something. So, for example, we go back to the famous mistakes that you're learning from. You're doing a mistake and you get really curious about why that is that in the new language this is different than maybe in other languages you speak. And so the confidence here is about asking those questions, being curious, learning from your mistakes. The opposite would be waiting until you reach that state where you know everything, and then you can be confident. Again, that is a belief about confidence in terms of when I finally reach that state. I call it also the when I finally mindset, which doesn't help you because there will never be a state like that. A language is always evolving. You will never reach a state of knowing all the vocabulary and knowing all the grammar perfectly. And then as a result of that, you can be confident. It just does not work like that. So embracing the learning as actually a way of being, that is the growth mindset here. And that is what I mean by curiosity. BCC, let's get to the third C. So that is the communication, continuous communication, social interaction. And I don't mean that as just the act of speaking to somebody. I mean it as it's so important to value that act of connecting to the other people. So every little intent of speaking with another person is social connection. And that releases not only happiness hormones, bonding, social connection and bonding will make you feel good about yourself. So it's not actually about the correctness of what you say or of the grammar of the language. It is about the social connection. So let me define it again through the opposite. What would be the opposite? The opposite option would just be isolating yourself from that social situation. Say, I don't speak this language, so it's better for me not to speak and not to bond with the other person. Well, that will just hinder you using that opportunity in your life to bond with the other person. Of course, we're assuming you are in a situation where you want to bond with that other person. I'm not saying you should bond with everyone, of course. That's the disclaimer. So what I recommend is, as always, have sentences ready in your next language that you're learning to actually be able to communicate what you're feeling at the moment, how you want to learn, and let the other one know what you're doing here. So, for example, I would say something like this in a new language. I would say, I'm not fluent yet. I'm learning the language. Can you help me? I'm feeling a bit nervous here because I'm not quite familiar with how to say this. Can you feel free to correct me? I just want to speak and want to say this. How would you recommend me to say it in your language, for example? And then you have a communication, you have a social bonding, and you earn so much more out of that moment that otherwise in your life you would have missed. And that's not living. My philosophy of life is also use social psychology as the art of bonding with the other. Give always a bit more of energy to the other, you will get so much more back. So holding yourself back from social situations is something I would say, unless it's a very toxic and dangerous social situation, it's never a good option because you isolate yourself from so much opportunity. So let me know, as always, let me know in the comments how you resonate with that. What is your experience? Of course, every experience is unique. I'm, as always, also saying there's no one best way, but try this and let me know how's it going. And as always, every comment gets a free version of my ebook, Everyday Nano Fluency in 7 Steps. So let me know how this is working in your life, and thanks for watching. See you next time.